let's just include everything that's going on here.
There was never any concept of cutting things out or removing them from the table. And for me, I'm happily married and have been for a long time, but I'm very much still, all my friends are in the community. We have younger friends, older friends, and I don't think, honestly, that in the modern world you can take issues like race out of dating. I think they're very much embedded. If you go on dating apps, people list preferences. If you like, there are photographs and Caucasian or more light skin presenting, they will generally get more hits on mainstream dating apps and things like that. And that you see that reflected in the what was it, in person, I guess, in person dating too. There is absolutely racial division within the queer community. I mean, the beautiful thing is, right, that we're homosexual, but we're not homogenous, right? People like to talk about, gay people or queer people like we all think the same. We all, and that's simply
Yeah.
not true. It's one facet of who we are. I'm a major believer in intersectionality. Okay, so I'm a woman, I'm a queer woman, I'm a woman of color, I'm neurodiverse, all of these different things, and they all make up who I am and who I work hard to be proud to be. It's not ever just one thing. So we wanted that to be reflected in the show and have the real conversations, because you definitely find that although we're all supposed to be love and acceptance and rainbows, there's a lot of exclusionary habits within our community that we wanted to address.
Where do you think we are, in the community and in the media, I guess in the media, like, yes, this show has done it all. It's included it all. There's no topic that shied away
Right.
from. There are, every body type is, represented, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
It's all inclusive. Like, but where do you think we are in the media in general in terms of the community?
I mean, listen, I think that there are always improvements, and I could list many things that I wish would improve. I still think generally it's cis presenting white Caucasian men predominantly that define the mainstream media landscape in terms of what it is to be gay. And on the one hand, that's appreciated because, let's be real, like, higher disposable incomes, generally higher on the socioeconomic hierarchy, kind of all of those things. So there's a power there. There's a voting power. There's a lobbying power that maybe queer women and people of color and trans people don't have access to. So, like, we need that and we want that and we're appreciative of that. But then there becomes, a very distinct hierarchy between, I hate the haves and have nots, but between the people who have so far benefited more from that exposure. So I feel like there's a lot of work to do. However, I look back and this is sort of culture in general. I look back to sort of the early noughts, right, and kind of what the media was doing to women then, and just how tiny we all had to be. I was a fashion model prior to acting, and I had a lot of amazing experiences, et cetera, but I had to be as thin as was humanly possible. And that has changed quite significantly, so, and, like upskirt photos and things like that. Like, that's what the paparazzi were doing back then. And then mainstream things were publishing it. Like, that was completely normal and acceptable, so sometimes I have to sort of dip my toe back in to things like that to realize how far we've come, and then there's lots of amazing queer women of color that are leading the way for us. We have Laverne Cox, we have Lena Waithe, we have so many phenomenal musicians, actors, writers, that are kind of leading that charge. Cynthia Erivo, like, phenomenally talented. So clearly there's been evolution, and clearly I would like some more.
We could have some more, and there has been a lot, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Did you watch The Bachelor yourself? Like, are you a fan of reality TV? And, like, do you have what are your guilty pleasures when you turn to TV? It could be scripted.
So generally my guilty pleasure, so I have watched The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, and I used to watch a lot more of that kind of reality TV sort of earlier in its more in its infancy. So I watched like the earlier seasons of The Real Housewives and things like that. I watched the Tila Tequilla show. Can't even remember what that was called now, but I watched that avidly at the time because we, that was the representation. And of course, that was sort of delivered. It felt like a big step at the time, and I'm sure it was, but it delivered us more for laughs, I think, than we would necessarily choose to be represented now. But it was still a major step forward. So The Bachelor, I do watch it peripherally, but as I said before, you know, on a really shallow level, like I'm not particularly attracted to high femme women. That's not my personal preference. So, the women are all amazing and talented, and some of them are incredibly accomplished, and I wish I was that accomplished, but there's no particular draw for me there. And obviously I'm not interested in the men either. So I find myself to be a little bit detached from that, you know, and that's not to say that I can't see why it's such a juggernaut and why people are so invested. It just doesn't really do it for me. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that is not bigoted, but prejudice of me.
No, I mean, that
But it
makes
doesn't suck
sense.
me
I
in,
think like a lot of you do think about some of the dating shows like Too Hot to Handle, like in F Boy
right?
Island. I think a lot of people, whether consciously or subconsciously, are watching them because they're attracted to all the guys or all the girls. I mean, so
Absolutely.
that is a good point.
But thank you for bringing up FY Island because I loved that show. I started watching it because I was like, well, this is a genius name. And then Nikki Glazer, am I saying her name correctly?
Yeah.
Um, I watch her stand up. I watch a ton of stand up comedy. So I knew her from that. And I ended up really, really enjoying it because it took a different spin on it. It really took the whole, well, which The Bachelor kind of dips its toe into, but it really took well, can you accept people at face value? And what are they really bringing to the table? And how do you identify red flags? And I really liked the bond that the women developed, and especially in season one, and how they were a support for each other, and hearing their thought processes behind why they were attracted to who they were attracted to. And so that element I really wanted to bring into coming out for love, kind of that discussion, because sometimes you don't even realize that you have sort of inherent bias or built into what you're attracted to or what you're not attracted to. If you grow up in one specific pool, it might not ever have occurred to you that, and I know it sounds silly, but I've come across it a lot. It doesn't really occur to a lot of people that there are different dating options, and that relationships can look and feel very, very different. And I also think that, and I've experienced this in my acting career as well, I think that very often on more mainstream TV, it's you see a Caucasian person, and the ethnic person dates the Caucasian person. Whereas I feel in sort of the real world, there's a lot of different ethnicities that date each other, and so that we don't necessarily see reflected as much, I don't think. So that was an exciting thing for me to explore in coming out for love. We have a black lead, and that very much changes the. Are we losing internet?
No, I could hear you. You just faded in and out for a minute. Can
I
you
was
hear me
being
now?
mystical.
I know. You were just, but
Yes, I can hear you now.
okay. It was just a minute.
I was just chatting on.
No, I like heard everything you say. You were saying like we have a black lead in this.
Yes. Yeah. So we have a black lead. She is more of a tomboy than a high femme. Although, even these categories, I think, they exist because we like to, humans categorize each other. It's how we organize things. But I think even within that, we all have different parts of ourselves. Like people tend to think I'm very feminine because of how I present. And I think my personality is, you know, probably more masculine than is immediately obvious. So
That makes a lot of sense. Well, talk to us about our lead, Amber Whittington. I mean, she has 1.9 million followers. To tell us about her.
Amber's wonderful, phenomenal. I am lucky to know her a little bit. What can I tell you? She is, well, she's a lover, right? And she is a person that sort of meets the world head on and with open arms and wants to have as many experiences as possible. And is she's a Virgo, very much a Virgo. And so the approach that she takes to trying to find her true love